Hey, good morning and welcome to HR and the Power Hour with Steve Mann. He is on his way. There was some issues with me giving him the wrong link to join us. He will be here shortly. So today we're going to talk about some of the pitfalls that people want to, business owners, we want to avoid. And we're going to have Steve come in here. He's sharing 5 of his top tips of things that a business owner should avoid when they're doing their own payroll. And as always, Steve is with formerly known as SDP. Now it's called Pay Entry. Maybe a month ago, they joined forces with a company on the East Coast that are pretty similar to how they are as far as their ethics and their morals and their goals. And they joined together. Now they're a much stronger unit as one. So as I say, Steve should be joining us here any second, and we'll get on with today's show and answer your questions. I do want to point out that if you do have any questions, please put them in the comments, and then we will answer them. Steve will answer them. And let me see. I see Steve now. He's in the green room. Yep. It looks like they're just finishing a little makeup and a little powder on his nose. And here he comes. Hey, Steve, how you doing today?
Oh, brother, Jeff. Great. I just heard about the powder and makeup. That just makes me laugh.
Hey, you're not supposed to hear that. You're in the green room. So, I apologize for giving you the wrong link. As I'd mentioned before, I was a little tight back to back with shows, and I apologize for that. But tell us again what today's topic is all about.
So I thought, and you very good, Jeff, in kind of helping us keep track of the pulse of our listeners, our audience. And so just in response to their request, I thought it would be helpful to talk about what I think are the top 5 HR mistakes that
Okay.
they're trying to do HR themselves versus outsourcing. And if they have either no HR department or an inexperienced HR department.
Fantastic. Well,
That hopefully businesses will find helpful.
great. Well, I'm going to step aside. I'll be manning the banners and also watching for comments. I just want to remind everybody that this is a live program. If you're joining us live, please put your comments in the questions for Steve, or your questions in the comments for Steve, and I will feed them to him. If you're watching it afterwards, please just put your comments in the section, whether it's on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn, and we'll make sure Steve gets those. Steve, let's have a great show.
Okay. And before you break away, Jeff, okay.
Yes.
I was just going to say, I'll trust your judgment. If there's a certain point, maybe after a couple questions where you think you might want to come in, hit some clarifying questions. If anyone had any questions, about it, feel free to do that.
Fantastic. I will do. Thanks, Steve.
Okay. All right, everyone. Well, let's kick off with, I think we'll just call it mistake number 1. And it's, I think what I will say before, and Jeff's already put it up, forgetting to update your employee handbook. I think one of the things that all these mistakes have, if you want to think of a common denominator, is that they're very easy mistakes to make, and they sadly can be very impactful to a business. But let's go ahead and talk about forgetting to update an employee handbook. So I think, as all of you probably know, an employee handbook provides a foundation for a business, and it's really should be considered a what's the word I'm looking for? It's almost like a living document that policies, procedures, working conditions, and expectations are defined. So it's always something that I guess dynamic is the thing I'm thinking of. It should always be really changing. And employee handbooks, some of the benefits to a business: it can help a small business avoid misunderstandings and minimize their risk regarding employment-related lawsuits and claims. And many of these claims, often stem from inconsistent treatment, of employees, or a lack of clarity in policies and procedures. So, hence the importance of an employee handbook. And handbooks that outline policies and guidelines, not only provide expectations for employee conduct, but they also create a framework to guide management and leadership. So it helps ensure that policies are enforced appropriately and evenly across departments. I think a lot of business owners maybe just think, oh, this is just something that, hey, it helps define, putting guardrails for the employees. It also does that for management as well. And I think one thing that I will add, on this is I was at a breakfast, a networking meeting last week that the featured speaker was an attorney, was a labor attorney, and what she said is basically if heaven forbid you find yourself in some kind of a legal dispute with an employee, most likely the first thing that person's attorney is going to ask for is your handbook. So I think that's just something that. I don't know. I was trying to think of a good analogy, and I think that everybody probably agrees that it would be foolish to not show up to an interview without a resume, right? So I think in like fashion, for a business to first, if you don't have an employee handbook, make sure you get one. But for those of you that have one, you should be looking to update it. I'd say at least once a year. All right. So now let's talk.
Can I ask a question on that? I'm just curious, what kind of events, what are triggering events that say, hey, wait a second, I need to change that in my handbook? I mean, are we talking about if I change my lunch schedule, do I have to update my handbook? What are some of the triggering events that cause that to be something that we want to update, Steve?
I think, well, yes, what you just said, sir, I'd say there should be a little intuition and judgment, and I think this is also again the tough part. If you're doing HR yourself, is as a business owner, it might not be very intuitive or very apparent to you, when you should be updating your handbook. I think for me, I would say, sure, any change to policy, anything that maybe that comes down at a federal or state level. So it could be changes to wages, time off. I think, for example, just as an example, at the beginning of the year, sick pay, sick accrual changed from 3 days to 5 days. So certainly that I feel like that in of itself is important enough to update the handbook. So should be defining that people have 5 days off a year, and then also should be further be defining how is that accrued? Is it something that accrues over time? Are they given a lump sum of those 5 days at the beginning of the year in their account? Those are things that should be updated appropriately in the handbook. Did I answer your question there, Jeff? I'm going to assume I did.
Definitely, you did. It's just one of those things that feels like it's something that is more of a permanent change, not a temporary type of thing. That it would be an update.
And then I think again, I think what the purpose, one of the purposes of these weekly shows is to maybe equip, maybe make people aware, small business owner aware of some things that they might not be thinking about. But I think what I would also caution, you all, I am giving you, some of my thoughts, some dare say wisdom, as reflective of experience. But I hope that it is not, don't think in your head, oh, Steve just told me, what are triggering events or things that I should do. So now I'm set. I still don't need HR. I think what I hope to do is certainly, hey, give you some free advice, give you some things that might make you come away, a little more knowledgeable than before you started listening. But I think really it should underscore the importance of having a capable HR support, whether it be in the form of you hiring a certified and credentialed HR manager, or if you're the kind of business that can't do that, then outsourcing your HR to someone like PayEntry SDP.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Steve. That was a good question.
Okay. All right.
Good response.
Good question, Jeff. Keep those coming. So let's
all right
to the second mistake, and that is lack of documentation for performance-based termination. So let's face it, I don't know anybody who is comfortable with having the kind of candid conversation with with employees that you have to have when they aren't performing well. It isn't easy, but you don't want to exacerbate a challenging situation by failing to document those those interactions, those conversations. So, it's important, and especially when if you're terminating the employee as a result of continued poor performance, proper documentation is really important. And it's not just documentation on the employer side. We were writing in your journal, hey, I talked to Jeff Harrison on October 2nd. It should be in some instances, to be appropriate for the employee to sign an acknowledgement indicating that they understood that we had this discussion. So I would say, generally speaking, this is probably something a lot of you know, but I think having some kind of a progressive discipline policy. So, and it should be doing two things. Really, it should be providing the employee an opportunity to improve their performance. Because remember, when something like this happens, everyone in the office is probably aware. People talk, so they know that somebody might be maybe on thin ice, so to speak. So they want to know, they want to be able to see that this person is giving every opportunity to correct their performance, to improve their performance. But if they aren't able to improve, you also want to make sure that the second goal is that it will support any decision to terminate or demote that employee. So, if you don't have the documentation that shows a pattern of poor performance, small businesses may open themselves to liability issues such as wrongful termination or discrimination compliance. So I think, just generally speaking, reasonable steps to follow in a progressive defensive policy could be like a verbal warning, where you discuss the specifics of employees' poor performance, and even though it's verbal, should still be documented, in the employee's file. The next can be a written warning, and that can be you're meeting with the employee, and I'm kind of wearing my manager's hat here as the manager. You meet with the employee and also a member of HR. So I think you just want to make sure it's not just yourself and the employee. Having a third person is important, and again, providing some written information as to how the employee isn't performing, the expected course of action, and consequences of noncompliance. And this would be a good instance where you'd want that signed by all meeting attendees. Then you could have, if you like, you could have another, final warning. Let's just say you've gotten together and maybe the performance still isn't there, and then there will be, maybe one more chance, and it could be similar to the previous meeting, but the condition that hey, any further performance issues are going to result in termination. Again, another good time to have everyone sign that, all attendees sign that, and then finally you would be at termination, and this is where you notify the employee of termination. You'd provide a written dated document that goes over final pay, collecting company property, and retrieving employees' personal items. So I think that if you follow something like that, I think one of the really good guides is you never want termination to come as a surprise to the employee. If the employee claims to be surprised, or you just sense that they are, then you probably didn't do an effective job. But I think if you just thought of those steps that I outlined, it probably, by the time you get to the termination phase, that employee knows what's coming along. So that takes care of number two. I'm going to move on to okay. See you pop back.
Yeah, I just have a question. Are these things that you're talking about, the steps of termination and or disciplinary process, are these things also found in employee handbooks, so that when I come aboard for that company, it's there and I kind of know the process, it's not a surprise? Or is that not something in an employee handbook?
I think it could be an employee handbook, but I think sometimes it's not, found in an employee handbook. I think that, if I just think off the top of my head there, one of the things that a lot of California businesses hide behind is the notion of at-will employment. I think that a lot of people are, hey, we're in California, it's at-will employment. That means you can be let go at any time. And a lot of people just think that, oh, okay, well, that gives me, kind of gives me my quote unquote out for having to do all the things that I mentioned. I think that if there's any downside to listing everything the way I said, is maybe it can be a bit of a demotivator.
Mm,
A lot of times the first time a lot of people might look at employee handbook is when they're first joining the company. So when they're first joining the company, they're all jazzed, right? They're all excited. So you don't want to talk about the steps that could lead to them being terminated. I would say that would be not included in there. But I think usually some verbiage that hey, California is at will employment. We'll make every effort to work with you. Maybe some high level comments. I hope that
gotcha.
answered your question.
Yeah, it did. It did. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's go on to number 3.
Okay. And so number 3, we're talking about outdated interview and hiring processes. So, I think something that I've mentioned from time to time, not to say that there's a stereotypical small business, that we're targeting, but oftentimes, many small businesses, and if we define that as 10 employees or less, or even 5 employees or less, oftentimes those kind of small businesses are defined by, how did they start in the first place? Probably family members, close friends. So, maybe there was no need to follow a lot of these processes. It could just be a very casual, hey, will you come work for me? Here's how much I'll pay you. Here are our hours. These are things we need to do to make our clients happy and grow our business. So there oftentimes not a lot of experience, in these different areas. And so I'd say interviewing and hiring would definitely be one of those things that often can get overlooked by a small business that maybe followed the sort of growth path that I just described. And so for someone that has had little or no experience, with interviewing, I would say just to, first start off and say that the interviewing and hiring process, it should be deliberate, purposeful, and consistent. Maybe consistent might be the most important one. And I think that if you're, when you're interviewing and hiring,
I'm just going to jump back in here. It looks like we might have had a little bit of technical issue with Steve there, maybe an internet issue, maybe a connectivity issue. I'm just monitoring it as well. And so he's off there. He's talking about outdated interview and hiring processes. And there's a question came in, from me online. And it asked, if somebody's new to this process, they're a new business and maybe it has been one that their family has been started and now they're growing beyond just their family. Is that something that Pay Entry or Steve and his company could actually step in and help us outline, hey, here is an interviewing process, that you need to interview at least 3 people. And these are the kind of questions that you ask. And then once you hire somebody, what is the hiring process like, going over the employee handbook versus here, you come to work at 8 and you leave at 5 kind of thing. Is this something that that Pay Entry can help with? I suspect the answer is yes. Steve has, as I say, he's having a little bit of a technical issue with his internet. Hopefully we'll get him back on here in a second and have that question answered. But that's one that popped into my head that we posted on LinkedIn. Here he comes. Steve, you're back.
Okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I think our technology gremlins. I hope that it was just maybe a loose wire.
It's a new month, when October, so that's okay. So I a question came up and said, hey, if someone is new to this hiring and interviewing process, can Pay Entry help outline this for a new business? So if I became that business that said, "Hey, I'm going to hire you for my HR and payroll," can you help with that process of setting up a formal interviewing and hiring process?
Yes, absolutely. I think again, this is the benefit of outsourcing HR, having a partner, someone that can that can do this. And so again, I think as I'm thinking about small business people, if they're saying, oh, hey, yeah, I can't afford, or I don't have the need to, to have an HR person, quote unquote, on staff all the time. But average small business, maybe they only hire 2 or 3 people a year, and so maybe it's basically, hey, when they need it, can they get some help? And the answer is absolutely yes. So I'd say our most basic level of HR support, it's something called HR on demand, and it would allow someone to access some templates around interview processes, questions, things like that, and then they can submit it to a to HR consultant. Say, hey, this is the kind of business I'm in. This is the kind of person I'm looking to hire. Here's some documents I've created, maybe even like a job description, and here's some questions I'd like to ask. Do you think these are appropriate? And so that's something that in maybe on those rare occasions that you do need help like that, absolutely, we can step in and give you that kind of support.
Fantastic. That helps. I think because some of these things, as a business owner, whether you're in the business for a while and now you're just expanding, or you're new to business, this can kind of be intimidating and overwhelming. So knowing that, I've got somebody, as you say, HR on demand, kind of in my speed dial on my phone, it sure makes it a lot easier. All right, let's go to mistake number 4: lack of
Yeah.
job training. Tell us about that.
Okay, this in a certain way is my favorite one. I don't want to say that in the context of, hey, it's my favorite mistake that people don't do, but I'm a big believer in job training. So I think when most people think about job training, they're probably thinking immediately of new hires, of getting someone up to speed. And I would say if I were to think about how the average small business hires, or rather trains new people, it might be a shadow technique. So maybe you take someone that's been there for a long time, and they just kind of follow that person around, and maybe a certain number of hours a day, and get to see the different things that they do. That tends to be a very hey, it's actually kind of an effective way to train people. But I think that more and more businesses see the benefit in having, I'd say, a good, maybe I dare say, automated or systematic way to train people. Um, so I think if we're talking about um, people coming on board, so really training should begin from day one. It should begin in the onboarding process, and what that does is it sets the right expectations for and can prevent it, some issues later. And as the employer, that's a great opportunity to introduce your company, your culture, mission, vision, and expectations. I think company culture, something that I was a little distracted on, for the last one. I think when most on the interviewing, most people what they are concerned about is that somebody's not a good fit. They hire someone that's not a good fit for their culture. So assuming you have hired somebody, you'll want to make sure that as part of your onboarding training that you are making it clear as to what your company culture is about. It is a reality that most new hires quit within the first 90 days. So this is very important. Now, I think something that employers don't think about as often are the need to have defined career paths within a company. You have good people. This is something I've talked about from time to time. The notion of employee retention, keeping your best people. So good people will stay with the company when they feel like there's opportunities for advancement, and there's no better way to underscore that by having training programs, that support those opportunities. So I think again, at the risk of stating the obvious, you're looking for you should want to find employees that you want to develop, into your company's next leaders. And I think one of the big HR mistake that small businesses make is promoting workers without adequate management training. Just because somebody is a great individual performer does not make them necessarily a great manager. So I think I bet a lot of business owners have frankly sad stories about taking an outstanding employee, dropping them into a leadership role, and then watching them just not succeed. So I think that just as an example, I think that the kind of training that you would want someone to go through who's considering a jump up into management might be things relating to coaching and visioning, negotiation, conflict resolution, communication. So I think hopefully I've emphasized, I think the importance of having good training. All right, and we'll go to the last one here, which mistake number 5: unclear company policies. So, clearly defined HR. This is a little bit in conjunction with updating the employee handbook, but I think it's worth mentioning by itself. So, clearly defined HR policies. It protects your business and educates employees about what is expected. I think. So let's just think about a couple off the top of my head that I think businesses who try to do their own, manage HR themselves, maybe that they forget about is one, how to file a complaint. Do all your workers know how to file, a complaint? There should be a process that allows employees to express concerns about work-related issues, and so having this helps manage liability as well as alerts management of a problem before it escalates. And I think the other one, we did have a talk on workplace violence, in the past. So disaster and workplace violence, a disaster recovery plan. It should include training for, and how your business will respond to crisis events. We do live in an earthquake, in an earthquake state. And then also, workplace violence is actually it's an OSHA requirement that all businesses, many businesses, put it that way, are required to have a workplace violence prevention plan. And that's always when I trip over. And I think that involves again, everyone knowing how to log a complaint for the business, keeping track of those complaints. And then just people understanding, making sure that they understand the policy. So that does it for unclear company policies.
Steve, I think this is a great thing. It's just those 5 things, and I'm sure there's more, but it feels like it really comes down to making sure you have your policies and procedures in place. So when some things happen, and a lot of times as a business owner, especially if you've been doing it with your wife or your spouse and maybe one of your children or whatever, and now you're expanding, there's so many things that we just take for granted. We just do, right? And we don't document them. And I came across this a few years ago for my family was involved, but what I started doing is I started outsourcing a lot of work. And one thing I started doing is I started documenting using video of what I was needing. So now that's kind of my handbook, if you will. So when I hire somebody to do, video editing or social media marketing, whatever it is, I can now just give them a video to watch, and then they sign off like, okay, I got it. It makes sense. How many businesses, and I don't expect a number, but percentage are starting to go to that type of technology, to using video as part of their training process?
Quite a few. I would say most of our clients do. In fact, that's actually one of our tiers of HR support, includes use of videos. So, because I think this is something that you said. in some of our meetings, that people are much more likely, it's much easier for people to watch something versus versus read something. And I think we agree on that too, that especially somebody who's in an onboarding mode, where what the common phrase for people onboarding is drinking through a fire hose, right? There's so much information that if they can take a break from a lot of the things that maybe by necessity they're required to read, and watch a video on something that pertains learning an important skill, or learning about company policies, maybe some kind of a role play that helps underscore things that we do for workplace violence prevention, or sexual harassment training, or things like that. Then we're big advocates of that. And I would say that I don't think pay entry is alone in utilizing video more. I'd have to say that probably our children out there are leveraging that as well.
I like that. I like that, because there are so many things that seem, one of the things I love about video is it takes something that's complicated and makes it much easier to understand, because now you're using more senses. That's the thing that, 15, 16 years ago that turned me on to video, that I thought that's a very powerful communication mode. And, we see it in binge watching and things like that. But as far as training is concerned, now you can actually say, hey, let's do a skit, if you will, that puts that employee in that situation, how it would be handled. And it's easier to remember, quite frankly. And the other thing I love about it is consistent. And I realize handbooks and things like that are consistent as well, versus just I told 7 different employees 7 different things, but I meant the same thing. I just think it's a great tool. So I was just curious about that. Steve, this is another great resource. How can people get a hold of you? I know some things have changed for you. I'm gonna put it on the screen here, and you can tell us how people can get a hold of you if they need some more information.
Yeah, you've got my email address here, steve.mann@payentry.com. Also, my direct number, 760-309-8807. Those are the 2 best ways to get a hold of me. And I understand that maybe for those of you who are joining for the first time, great, welcome. For those of you that have attended a number of sessions and are maybe a little confused, like, boy, I could have sworn that Steve used to say that he was with Southland Data Processing. Pay Entry acquired SDP a couple of months ago, and we're just in one of those slightly awkward transitionary phases where I think we're trying to, for those of us who know us as SDP and are afraid that somehow things are going to change a lot, we still use SDP to try to underscore that, hey, it's business as usual. But certainly, I think for Pay Entry, they ultimately would like the SDP folks to consider themselves, and for the clients also to feel like that they're part of the Pay Entry family. So you'll see me slowly move over more to the Pay Entry, but we'll always have the SDP spirit.
I love it. Well, thank you very much. Steve, you do the show every Wednesday, and I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're very busy. What kind of things, and this I'm catching a little off guard, is what kind of things is Pay Entry bringing into the fold that you say, wow, this is something that's going to be even more beneficial for our clients than we had before? Because you have a company that's 38 years old, SDP, so it's not like they're new kids on the block. But do you see anything coming down the pike, if you will, that will make it even better?
Well, so there's quite a few things, and I don't want to. I know we're running towards the end of our time, but I would say that there are some additional services that Pay Entry offers, and including group health benefits, retirement services. I'm trying to think, and and I would say, in terms of HR, there are certain HR partners that there's one in particular that I'm thinking of that they have that SDP did not have. That I think this is a lot of the things relating to maybe the training Remember, we did one episode where we talked about career pathing, that
Mm.
do a gaps analysis of, hey, I have this job now. I would like this different job. What are the gaps in my in my knowledge? So I think those are those are some HR tools that I think are pretty cool and pretty robust. And then
I look.
I would just also say that they are also very like-minded in terms of the importance of providing exceptional service. So one thing that and cut me off if you feel like I'm talking too much. But one thing that we did recently is we changed, we notified all our SDP folks of a different support email address.
Hmm.
Uh, and part of that is, now, the reality is most SDP clients are in California, and even then mostly in Southern California. But we do have some, as I've mentioned, we serve clients in all 50 states. So what part of this the new support we'll be doing is we're tapping into PayEntry's support ticketing system. It's just a better way to ensure nothing falls in the cracks. It also gives some access to their support team, which is on the East Coast. So I think the net effect is we're going to have a little more coverage, during. So if you're someone that doesn't work California hours, and maybe you don't like waiting until 8 a.m. for to call support, you'll be able to call now, probably maybe anytime after 5 a.m. Your time.
That's
And then,
great.
yeah, and then maybe PayEntry East Coast people that are saying, well, it'd be great if I could talk to someone a little past 5. Then the SDP folks are going to be a resource for them. So I feel like those are some exciting possibilities um, that we have for current and future clients.
I think that's great, Steve. Hey, once again, for those of you interested in more from Steve, you can get a hold of him at steve.mann@payentry.com, or his new phone number, 760-309-8807. He serves the Coachella Valley in Southern California area. You can also call or schedule a complimentary consultation with Steve anytime, and you can even go to their website and locate Steve's information, and then on his calendar, make an appointment to do a free consultation, which I think, it's like, I'm not trying to compare you to shoes, but I'm saying, hey, if I'm going to buy a pair of shoes, I'd like to put them on and walk around the showroom a little bit and see how they feel. Well, that's your opportunity with a free consultation to make sure that, there's no blisters on your heel when you sign up with SDP or PayEntry. So make sure to give them a call. Steve, as always, I really appreciate your help in sharing your time and the information, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for your time as well. And thanks everyone for listening in.
All right. Have a great week, everybody. Try to stay cool out there. It looks like we're having a break from the heat starting, I guess, about 8 p.m. tomorrow night. That's Thursday. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to stay inside till then. Steve, how about you?
Me as well.
All right.
It shouldn't be like this.
Take care.